Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, the show where every week we watch the very first televised episode of a different sitcom, discuss it as if we've seen no other episode of the show, and then at the end of the episode decide if that is a show that we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper went 5 seasons on ABC. It lasted 101 episodes. This week we're going to be talking about just episode 1, which was titled The Presentation, which aired originally September 22nd, 1992. So to start things off, I'm Jay Gags. With me, as always, the guys, Gordo, Joe, Nick, and Ferg. How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Yellow. Stockbroker William is fine.
And so to start things off, Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. Guys, is this a show that you had all seen before we recorded?
Yes.
Yes.
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of it. I've seen it, though, for sure. I knew what it was.
It was a TGIF show, right?
Yes. I remember it. I remember watching it, but I forgot most of it. So
Yeah,
I didn't recognize. We're going to get into it. Well, I'll just let Jay go, because the very beginning of this episode confused the shit out of me.
The cold open? Yeah, we'll get into it in 1 second. All right, so basically, yeah, this is a show that I very much remember. Like, it was a huge show in its time. I think it's like when we talked weeks ago about Perfect Strangers. It's not a show that is talked about much anymore, but it was really big in its time. I don't have like a huge remembrance of every little thing that happened on the show because it premiered when we were like 6 years old, but definitely huge in its time. But let's get to it. So it starts with the cold open. The cold open was very fourth wall breaking, different than anything we've seen thus far on our show, at least with shows we've reviewed. It starts with Alan Thicke walking in as Jason Seaver. So Growing Pains, Growing Pains went 7 seasons, I think they said, in the cold open.
Yep.
And that show ended in 92. So basically, Hangin' with Mr. Cooper is taking over that time slot. It's almost like a passing of the torch thing they're doing. So Alan Thicke walks in again as Jason Seaver and runs into Mark Curry, and they're just they're going back and forth. And at first, Alan Thicke is pretending that he's not Alan Thicke; he's staying in character. And then they do the whole no, it's me, Alan Thicke. We stopping by. You're the new show, right? And it's a promo for the show that you're already watching, which is kind of interesting. But they seem to use it as like a passing of the torch moment, I guess.
I
didn't see it at all.
I forgot, because I watched Growing Pains as a kid too, right? But I didn't.
It's
realize...
the same set.
Yeah, I think that goes away.
That.
So they make jokes
it does
about
go
that.
away.
They give him the house. And
Okay,
it goes away,
that's what confused me.
Because they leave that picture up, and I thought it'd be funnier if they kept the picture up for the whole series. You just had some random family on your wall.
That was something I went back and I made that mental note after the actual intro. Is it actually the same set? It was just the same studio they used, but
yeah.
I mean,
No,
it
it's
was
the same house.
No,
It's
it was the
house
same
from-
exact house.
Yeah, it's the Growing Pains house.
Was it really
it's
the same house?
same exact house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
they
the exact
basically
same
just took
set.
the
So they
whole
just
set
decorated
and,
it different?
made
That's
them
so-
go in there. They put a few different things in there, but I think that by the second episode, which I don't know because it doesn't exist and I didn't watch it, I think they give them a different house. But I think that was part of the joke of here's Alan Thicke, you're taking over the time spot. Here's the
So I
house.
guess maybe, in theory, they recorded the pilot episode truly as a pilot, and I'm just speculating. So maybe they recorded the pilot, so instead of creating a whole new set, they were like, it's just in a house. We'll just use this house.
Yeah, I think they probably just were like, we're off for this week. Use the Seavers house, and we'll just change some stuff around.
It could have been something as simple as they just weren't ready on that set yet, and they still had the other one, or they really weren't sure what was going to happen with the show, so they just did the pilot there.
But also something we see a lot.
But it's like a whole... I would assume the show is targeting a very different demographic in general, too. It's supposed to be a younger, hipper show, as we'll discuss, going straight into the intro. But, as we still talk about this cold open, the dialogue...
Oh, you could
between
not
the
do
two
that now.
kind of shows you that...
Could not do that dialogue.
It's a different... Yeah, some of the stuff Alan Thicke said to him, he's like, good luck in the hood, and hey, if you ever need a white guy... And I'm like, oh...
Yeah, the hey, if you ever need a white guy thing. It's like, I'm just leaving my television show with a main character named Boner.
And it was funny, but it's also it shows you that we're targeting a different audience, right? We're making Alan Thicke's character look a little dated. When Mark Curry says to him, wasn't your show canceled? He's like, no, it was retired. But obviously this is the new generation that they're trying to target. And
I can't believe you can say Alan Thicke so many times without doing Alan Thicke's accent. I can't say his name more than once without going like, Alan Thicke.
Ben?
In the thick of the night with Alan Thicke. It's impossible not to do it. You guys ever in the thick of the night with Alan Thicke? It was on when we were like really little. Gilbert Gottfried was on it all the time.
No.
No, you know what? The only other thing I remember Alan Thicke from is didn't he host like
Love
that
Connection.
No, like it was like a magician show like that David Copperfield would do in front of like a big audience, and like other magicians would be there and shit. And like Alan Thicke would come out for 10 seconds and like, up next, so and so, and he'd come out and, you know, make shit disappear. And I don't know why
Alan Thicke would make shit disappear?
Alan Thicke.
I remember him from Love Connection, which was
Yeah.
also a little. I don't know if it ran at the same time or before.
It may have been concurrent, but I think it went a little longer because that daytime syndication stuff lasted forever when we were kids.
Yeah, and the only other thing I really want to get into before we actually get into the episode itself was this show was created by...
was he Love Connection or is that Chuck Woolery?
Maybe.
Love Connection was Chuck Woolery.
or was it Tom
Okay.
Bergeron?
I don't know why my brain remembers that it was Chuck Woolery. We're back in 2 and 2.
Yeah.
Chuck Woolery. Yeah, I think it was Chuck Woolery.
Was it? Well, whatever.
It wasn't
So-
Alan Thicke.
So, so anyways, this show was created by Jeff Franklin, who's, I guess, most known for creating Full House. So even though Full House still ran for a few more seasons after Mr. Cooper started, he basically was distanced from that show, kind of broke away to start something else, and created this show. And this was created for ABC. I was looking at the top shows of the year before in 91, and it was like ABC and NBC basically were at war with each other as far as all the top slots, especially in like that kind of primetime sitcom demographic. CBS, nowhere to be found, really. I was looking at some of the shows, like ABC definitely had Family Matters, which was like on the up at the time. They had Full House, which is a mega hit, but I think they were looking for something that was a little cooler, because when you look at some of the other shows, like A Different World and Fresh Prince were both on NBC. So I think this was kind of created as a way to get some of those viewers onto their network, because a lot of the stuff they had going on was like family comedy.
Like a younger, hipper comedian who hits a different audience, who's not exactly crazy family. There's no kids in this show, right? It's like it's not a family sitcom. There's not a bunch of kids running around, but they are so smart because they bring it into a school.
Yeah, the students.
We'll get to
To
it,
get
but
the kids in, yeah.
if you want to have kids around,
Yeah.
you make these people untethered by family, and then you bring them into a school so you can have kids coming around, and then you don't have to have them around all the time. You can still have the sexual jokes and the dating jokes and stuff. It's pretty good. Jeff Franklin's smart.
Yeah.
It's a show made out of wood.
Also, Alan Thicke was on Fuller House. Full Connection.
Was he? That had to be one of the last things he did.
He went on the date.
passed
He
a
went on
couple
the
years
date
ago,
with
too.
DJ when she broke up with like both other guys, and
Wait, Alan Thicke died?
He's dead.
yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Sorry,
When?
guys.
Are we confusing
2020.
this, or do we have blurred dyes?
Alan Thicke, yeah, he's dead.
When did
No,
Alan
he's
Thicke
not.
die?
He did die.
Couple
He
years
died
ago, I think.
He
recently.
died. I think he died like skiing or something.
No, that was Sonny
up.
Bono.
That was
That was Sonny Bobo.
Sonny Bobo. Don't want to end up like Sonny Bobo.
No,
He's
yeah.
dead. Really?
He is dead.
Alan Thicke
yeah.
is dead. Robin Thicke, alive and well, and hosting The Masked Singer. Well, a panelist
Alan
for The
Thicke
Masked
died in
Singer.
2016.
Oh, so
Whoa!
like 5 years ago.
I
yeah.
thought it was during COVID era.
It's a rough 5 years. R.I.P. Alan Thicke. I knew it.
What the
All right, well,
fuck?
I guess moving on, because we
And
talked
didn't
for 10
Boner
minutes.
die too? Speaking of Alan Thicke, though, didn't Boner die in some crazy weird way right around the same time? Because he was on
Who's
Growing
Boner?
Pains too. Boner from Growing
I
Pains.
forgot you don't watch many television shows.
Yeah, Gordo has no idea what we're talking about. But Boner was a character in Growing Pains who was.
I remember Growing Pains. I saw it like once or twice, but I don't remember a boner. I'd remember a boner.
Could somebody
check this
please
later, but I
clip
think that-
Gordo saying, "Who's Boner?"
You know what's funny is I just looked him up, and you have to type boner growing pains.
We've all been there. But I think he died in a really weird way. We'll look into it later. But for the audience out there, I'm pretty sure Boner died around the same time, and it was like they were looking for him. I remember the news articles on CNN being like missing
Well,
Boner.
Yeah, he missed his flight, and then a group of friends found him in a park where he hung himself.
Oh God.
Yeah.
All right, well, to keep it on a light note, 10 minutes in, let's get into the intro of the show. Okay. So, all right, so, what a weird transition. So the show starts, and immediately I'm like, all right, this is super 90s. Like, the colors, the wacky fonts, which were, like, very big with, like, shows in the 90s were, like, not quite ransom font, you know, a mishmash of different fonts and colors. And it was, like, the whole intro of the show involved the two main girls in the show and Mark and a couple other girls. And essentially it was like almost like an En Vogue music video from the 90s. It was like kind of like an R&B music video, basically just to make Mark Curry look like the coolest man on planet Earth.
I thought that was one of the worst intros we've seen so far.
It was
It was
very,
awful.
very dated.
It was pretty
Yeah.
cringy.
But I will say, Jay, to your point, an En Vogue music video is a very accurate description.
The song was great though.
Maybe it's just not my kind of music. It
I-
just didn't do it for me. It bored me.
The tone, it wasn't rhythmic.
Did you guys know though that particular theme song, Alice Cooper was originally slated to do it, but he couldn't do it due to scheduling.
Was it going to be exactly the same,
not know
but
that.
Alice Cooper?
I don't know, but
He was the
didn't
Mr.
do
Cooper?
it.
Was he also going to star in the
I
show?
think that was supposed to be the connection.
I want to watch that version of the TV show.
You had to have made that up.
My
No, I
favorite,
didn't. Go look on Wikipedia. I have pictures, screenshots.
You screenshotted it?
My favorite thing ever, Gordo, is whenever we listen back to one of our episodes, you always just say, Wikipedia, Wikipedia. That's the furthest you go for any knowledge of anything. Gordo only sources Wikipedia.
Also, I want to point out from the intro, and this, by the way, looks like they're trying to make this a very cool intro, but I think this is what happens when you have Jeff Franklin, the old creator of Full House, trying to make a show that's supposed to be like hip and cool. It's like, so what do? Like, we'll make it look like a music video. We're gonna have him sink a basketball shot that's like 6.5 feet up. Like,
They really pushed the basketball thing right away, so you know that's going to come into play.
yeah, so I mean, we'll get into the actual intro of the show then, because it starts right away where he's just home watching basketball, and a girl walks in who I assumed was his girlfriend at the time, because
I thought
me
it was
too.
his
yeah,
mom.
there's nothing to go by. But
you thought it was his
She
mom?
looked much older than him.
I think you need new glasses, bud.
I guess like if you look at their dynamic, it was very like parental the way she talked to him, right? It was like, have you been sitting there all day? And he does the joke like, no, I was sitting like this, and then I was sitting like that, and at the
It
he was
definitely
just
seemed
watching
husband
basketball
and
all day.
wifey more than anything, I think.
Yeah. I got a relationship vibe at that time. And I was also extremely distracted by the fact that his shoelaces were untied, but like not tucked in like other people who don't tie their shoes do. Like they were just flopping around.
Like when he got up to get that pizza, he probably should have fallen in his face.
Right. So they get to talking, and then we find out that another teacher at the school got sick eating fish sticks.
Which we find out are the hot dog of the sea.
Yeah, I was going to say the hot dog.
I wrote that down.
I wrote that down too.
Fish sticks are the hot dog of the sea, which I was, as she said it, I'm like, oh my God, fish sticks are the hot dogs of the sea. Like, what? That is
You
the
gotta
most
give it to
accurate
that
thing.
joke, though. It's 30 years, 29 years, call it 30 years later. All five of us watched the show, and we all came back being like, whoop, that was funny. Like,
Yeah,
anytime I see a fish stick from now on, that's the first thing I'll think.
That hit right away, yeah. And so, which created an opening because we find out she's a teacher. So this other teacher gets sick eating fish sticks, and as a result, he's going to be out of school for a little while, which creates an opening for Mark to be.
What the hell happened to this guy that he's
substitute?
out for this long?
I don't know. Listen, I've ate a lot of comparable fish sticks in my day. Yeah, I could say from personal experience that you can eat fish sticks at almost any point in time, and usually nothing will happen to you.
Not me. I
Not from
would
a school
legitimately
cafeteria,
die
though.
if I hit a fish stick.
Not from a school cafeteria though.
So this opens up Mark's
We didn't get fish
availability.
sticks at our cafeteria, though. We got cheese sticks.
Who wants
dicks?
cheese sticks?
You don't remember the way that cafeteria lady used to call out who wants cheese sticks?
No, it was cheese
I thought
tits.
you slipped.
Who wants cheese tits?
I don't recall that even a little bit.
She was very sweet. Also, thinking back on for lunch for children, they gave the one very thin, very small 1/4 of a Pop-Tart or whatever full of pizza filling as a lunch to sustain you just seems completely illegal by any
That's
Those
why
pizza
Jay
sticks were amazing.
used to cuff cheeseburgers, like slide them up his sleeve.
That wasn't
in the
until
line.
high school.
Yeah, that's what we were
Pizza
talking
sticks were
about.
elementary school, though.
You had to get friendly with the people at the school. At the high school, I
Pizza
was friendly. I
sticks.
got free
Jay-
extra puffs every day because they liked me.
Wearing a jacket. in
They were
May.
like made by Hot Pocket, and they like existed solely in schools because like I enjoyed them when I was like
Dude, my
7.
mom used to bring those home all the time. They were awesome.
Yeah, and I always was like looking in stores for them where they just didn't exist. Like they were like a school exclusive item for some reason. As if
I
kids didn't
didn't
want to
like
eat
them.
small things of pizza at home. What?
I didn't like them. I'm not a pepperoni guy, and they only had pepperoni.
Not a pepperoni pizza guy, you communist.
That's that Court Road life right there.
Pepperoni personally is not my favorite topping. This is going to be a wild tangent. I think pepperoni.
eggplant.
Pepperoni exists. Eggplant is a delicious pizza topping, but
Eggplant
pepperoni
is the bastardization of chicken parm, and it should not exist in this world.
No, Ferg, first off, I was defending you going on your anti-pepperoni rant, and I was going to say pepperoni to me is something that primarily exists because when they use pizza imagery and stuff, they need a topping, so it's just not a big hunk of orange. So they put the pepperoni topping because it's like good for photos. Otherwise, it just makes your pizza way too greasy.
It's greasy, but it's what you do is you get extra cheese, so it goes on top of the pepperoni, and it covers that grease up, and it is the best way to eat a pizza.
But then you get extra greasy cheese.
Yeah, on the way in, but it just sluices into your mouth anyway. It doesn't really
How would
matter.
you know you
No,
gluten
what you
free
have to
bitch?
do, what you need to do
I
is
can eat
cook.
gluten-free pizza. Fuck you, Ferg.
You need to cook the pepperoni for half the time of the pizza. You got to throw it in later. It's not. It's basically just warms up the pepperoni, but doesn't cook the grease out of it.
Oh, I love the burnt pepperoni though. I love when it burns. And
Listen,
curls
I
up
do
a
too,
little.
but the grease is an issue. How did we get? Where are we right now on pizza?
Let's
So
get off
anyways,
pepperoni. But I will
yeah.
say one thing you can always do: you can always put a paper towel on top of the pizza, sop some grease up, and you're good to go.
Yeah,
That's
but
too
then
much
it always
work.
pulls the cheese with it.
Well, you got to dab. You can't lay it on there. You got to kind of
Speaking of
gingerly.
dab.
So, Mr. Cooper,
So yeah. So for those of you who don't want to listen to a 4-hour show about pizza and Mr. Cooper, and let's condense
And
it
high
down a
school
little
lunches.
bit.
But if you do want to hear a
Yeah.
show about pizza,
We'll
can
do a
work
pizza
that out.
bonus. Yeah, eventually we'll just do a whole pizza episode. We'll talk.
Donate to our Patreon for our pizza episode.
We'll find various pizza scenes in different sitcoms and discuss them.
Hanging
but in
with
the
Little Caesar?
meantime, so what we had was the situation where the teacher that gets sick creates an opportunity for Mr. Cooper to be a substitute teacher at the school that Robin works at, which he's pumped because he thinks he's going to be like a gym teacher, which I don't know why he assumed that off the bat, but
That was my favorite line. I'm coaching science.
yeah. So yes, he's going to be a science teacher, and he's like, I don't know anything about like science for junior high. It's like, well, you want to be a teacher, right? Like you should probably have some basic like knowledge of some of these subjects because is he only qualified to be a gym teacher?
Yeah, I don't
Do you
know
need-
what the
I've never
requirements
substitute
were.
taught before, but do you need more than just a high school diploma? Like this isn't like a
Not,
rant.
not
I don't know.
to be a
Do you need-
substitute. I don't think so. Look at
No,
some
you
of the
don't have to be
subs
a
we
sub.
had back in the day.
Yeah, but that was 20 years ago. I'm just
But
saying.
I
Like,
feel
I don't
like-
know how
I
different that
thought
is
you
now.
did. I thought you needed
'Cause
to
you needed
have
a
at least
degree,
a
like a
bachelor's
legit-
degree.
Like a
But
master's
you don't need
I
like
do
a,
not
you
have
don't
a
need like a
bachelor's
teaching
degree.
degree or anything like that. Like you don't need to like be on the course to become a teacher.
No, I thought you just need a bachelor's degree. It doesn't matter what it's in. It's just you could be. It could be.
No,
Like,
I mean I was a substitute teacher. I don't have a bachelor's.
Oh,
degree.
you actually substituted. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But the vibe I got was he's trying to get an in to become a teacher.
I think he has an in to become a coach, though.
Yeah,
I
but
think
it
he was-
wasn't like,
yeah.
oh, sick, I have an availability to be the gym teacher for a week. Like, I was under the impression he's been looking for an in to work at the school. Like, he was
But
looking for a teacher gig.
I also feel like if you don't live in a place where like high school sports are huge, like so for example, hockey in Minnesota, right, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, whatever, or football in Texas, right, you can be the coach of the high school football team or the high school hockey team, and that's your whole job.
Yeah.
Because sports are so like those sports are so big, that's your job. But like where we grew up, the hockey coach also half-assed taught us about sex ed. I mean, like you're also
Right.
have to be
Yeah.
a teacher. Like I don't know where, I forget where they say Mr. Cooper takes place. but-
Oakland. It's Oakland.
It's Oakland. Okay. Well, I've been to Oakland. Oakland's great, but they don't seem like the kind of place that has the money to or the sports programs that they would.
They're not
give him-
world renowned for having
Right.
like a basketball program that would require. It's not like high school football in Texas or like you said, Minnesota hockey or something like that.
I will say though, anybody ever gets to San Francisco, go to Oakland too, because Oakland's sweet, and the Oakland A's stadium is amazing and old and disgusting, and it's perfect.
And about to die. So I'm glad you
tearing
have
it
fond
down?
memories. Yeah, it's almost yeah. Well, they're looking for a new home.
Delia's
bummer.
chained himself to the gate, so
It's in rough shape, and it's time to either completely fix it or move on.
I mean, I will say we got seats in the bleachers, like at the very last row of the bleachers, and it was fun because everybody there was from Boston too, so it was just kind of like
Nice.
a drunken like, Red Sox fans, kind of thing. That was really interesting, but you definitely felt like the whole thing was going to fall apart behind, like under you at any time.
Right.
It's also one of the first times in a long time that I went in to use a bathroom and there was just like 3 people in a row with just their full pants down peeing, which like, you forget about that.
oh Jay style.
I don't do that anymore.
You don't
I
see
feel
him
like
very
every
often
episode,
anymore.
it's like you guys are trying to sneak in weird stuff I've done throughout my life.
You've just done a lot of weird stuff, Jay. It's
Yeah,
tough.
but like,
It
I'm
adds
here
up,
to
buddy.
talk about Mr. Cooper.
We're not sneaking it
Well,
in. It
well,
comes up
Imagine Mr. Cooper
organically.
goes to an A's game and he goes to the top deck and he goes to pee and he pulls his entire pants down and there's also mirrors on both sides so you can see his front and his back naked while you're peeing and you have to try to not laugh like a child the entire time even though you're 30-something years old.
So before we move on, I'll say this real quick and we'll move on from it. I used to go to my ankle with my pants in public bathrooms in my 20s because I thought it was very funny. There was one incident at a rest stop where a gentleman in a stall reached out from under the stall and took a photo of me doing that, and I never, ever did it again. That was the last time I ever did that.
If there was ever a chance for us to find whoever took that photo, now's the time. Because
I will tell
Are
you,
you
whoever
out
took
there?
that photo, yeah,
Please be out there. Please tweet us. Please whatever we have.
guarantee-
S1E1pod.com.
whatever gentleman took that photo is probably not someone you want to be in touch with. But let's move on. So another girl walks into the house, and she had, like, to me at least, at the time, like kind of that Hillary Banks vibe. She had like the power suit on, but like very attractive, assuming you know that she was the roommate. Yeah. And she immediately just starts talking to Robin that she has a date with William, who was a stockbroker, and how she tricked him into asking her out by forgetting to fax something and then driving all the way to his office and casually mentioning that she had nothing to do that night, and by so tricking him into asking her out.
My two favorite
like-
lines of the whole episode come from this whole scene. One where she goes, "Damn, William is foine," which is just like a weird '90s accent thing I forgot all about. Like not saying it like in an accent, just like, "Oh, is he attractive?" Like, "Yeah, he's foine." Like it makes me laugh so hard. I'm just gonna use it all the time again
Foine.
now. But also, she says she likes his butt so much she wishes she was a wallet. That
Also
that
wrote
down,
that
yeah.
down. Yeah.
destroyed me.
That was an amazing line. And also it was like, you tricked him in asking you out. Like, this girl is stunning. Like, she walks in and like, I don't think you had to do a lot of like mental games to like get this guy to ask you to dinner.
Yeah, I think that guy was like, okay.
No, he's,
But that's all
he's
it
a
took, right?
successful broker.
And then
though.
eventually, because she had a Hillary Banks vibe, she did get proposed to by him while he bungee jumped to his death later on.
Hillary Banks, will you marry?
Yes, Trevor.
Yes, Trevor.
So,
I love this show because it's so perfect, because our brains are completely broken by all these sitcoms. These moments
I think-
are fucking so funny.
I think the show just put us all into like a time warp. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
what's happening right
We got
now. Is
sucked
like
right back in.
we're also like overwhelmed with nostalgia from watching something from the early '90s. That it's like it's just bringing everything
By
back.
the way, until the damn thing, I thought she was his sister because I thought the other character was the mother.
I also
Yeah, so-
thought that, yeah.
So
They had a very sibling relationship with the bickering, so that one's a little more.
It's also
explainable.
weird for at that point in time to have roommates like at their age. Like they weren't young, they weren't
Well,
old,
they're
but
not-
like, you know, the fact that it was just like 3 roommates and it was a whole nice house in Southern.
Yeah,
it just
how'd they get
didn't
the
make
Seaver
sense.
house?
but I don't think. No,
It's
I don't
weird
think
because they have
if you look
jobs,
back,
like good
are they
jobs.
really? Are they much different than like they're probably younger in that show than we are now? So they're probably like late 20s or something. It's not that crazy.
Maybe they just seem older to me.
I think
like,
you get locked
I
into
think people
because
just
your
age
knowledge of them is
differently
as
now,
a
yeah.
kid.
You watch that as a kid. They're way older than you.
Well, see,
and
no,
now
I mean,
you
I'm just-
grew
I was
up,
just-
and you still see
How old
them
was
as you
Mark
saw
Curry
them
in
as a
Attended
kid, as older than you.
So the sister, the one who thinks the dude is fine, was
Foyne?
30 at the time.
Holly
Okay.
Robinson.
Yeah.
Paula
Just
Poundstone?
saying, there's a chance.
Mark Curry was born in 1961, so he was 31.
31.
31.
So he's a little younger
So
than we
about
are now.
30.
It's not that
Yeah.
crazy to have roommates.
That's not that far away from having
No, I mean,
roommates.
I
had
have a
roommates
roommate. Yeah,
pretty
it's
close
just-
to that.
But I want to touch on kind of what you were saying earlier, like figuring out the dynamic between them all, because until he said something kind of flirty, and then at this point of the show, I'm still under the impression that Mark and Robin are a couple, and that
Yeah.
she's just
I was
her
too.
friend.
I
so
was
then,
too.
so then we get to a point where Mark is accused of having a crush on Vanessa, like from Robin, and I was like, well, that's a weird way to approach that. You think like your boyfriend has a crush on your friend, and I was like, this is weird. But it wasn't until a little more time passed, and then she's like, you know, we grew up together, like since what, 3rd grade or whatever. So now you're like, oh, okay, so they're childhood friends that moved in together, and she is also the roommate. So basically, Robin is friends with Mark. Robin is friends with Vanessa. Mark and Vanessa have some weird relationship just because they're stuck living together through circumstance. That is the actual dynamic. And it took a few minutes to kind of piece that all together. You kind of had to
I think
pay
I
attention.
think they were a little clumsy with it too, right? Because I have that. I was like, man, what are we at now? Who is dating? Is it a family thing? And this is their friend who he's like a crush on. Like, you don't really kind of figure it out. They play it all up for you eventually, but at first you kind of don't get it.
And
Also,
you know what I
want to
thought
real
was
quick mention, Nick had mentioned it, but this is where you start getting Mark Curry trying really hard to make his catchphrase work, because the entire rest of the episode is just him being like, damn, damn, over and over again.
Well, I thought it was really weird. It went from, he's like kind of bickering back and forth with Vanessa early on, and like we said, could have been like almost like sibling like, and then and Robin accuses him of liking her, having a crush on her, completely denies it. What are you talking about? Absolutely not. 2 seconds later, it's very openly flirting with her, like not just subtly. He's being very flirtatious with her immediately after. So you went from just denying adamantly that, no, I don't like this girl at all, to very publicly flirting with her in front of her and the friend who just accused you.
Yeah,
And
I'm obviously into her.
I thought it was a little weird that they just flipped it that quick. It wasn't like a subtle build. It was like, oh, well, since we're going to talk about it, yeah, I might as well just flirt now.
They kind of packed a lot into this, right? Because, we've been talking for half an hour about this, whatever, and we're halfway through the show. We have some shows we talk about where you're kind of struggling to get through even the plot devices.
We're not
or
even
anything.
halfway. He hasn't even gone to the school yet.
We're in like the first scene. We just spoke for a half hour about a lot of weird shit.
It was actually a thought I had during this was, all the shows are like this, right? This was like a 20-minute show. If you don't count, intro credits at the end and stuff like that, it was like 20 minutes of actual footage. I don't see how this episode took more than a day to film. They did like 3 scenes at the house, 2 scenes at the school, and that was like the end of the show. Like, there was not much to it at all.
Well, like we said, I mean, without getting ahead of ourselves, because we only know this episode, but it sounds like this pilot was filmed as a pilot to kind of just get that feeler out. And if they're changing sets and stuff after, they were just trying to give an overall vibe of the show, so they kept it simple. They only introduced you to a handful of characters.
Small adult cast, and then like you have some kids coming up, but those are like day player kids who are getting whatever union scale. Like, you get them for a couple hours to make a couple of jokes. They probably filmed all that school stuff in like 1 4-hour chunk or something.
Yeah, and so what I liked about that is because that was the next scene is when we enter the classroom, and the first thing I picked up on was like, I don't know what it is, but something about like every classroom in that time frame on television all look kind of the same. It has this very 90s TV show classroom look, and I don't know exactly what it is that does it, but it's very like a staple look, for me at least.
It reminded me of all the shows that did this, like Head of the Class, which is probably coming soon to the podcast, and there's a lot of TV show, Saved by the Bell, Head of the Class.
There was an interesting thing I saw, like it was a long time ago actually, when they talked about filming school scenes, and I think they used Boy Meets World as one of the. Jay, you all right?
Yeah, I'm looking ahead. I know. I'm thinking about a scene we're about to talk about. So finish your thought.
Oh, I thought you were talking about that girl from Boy Meets World you've been talking about.
No, they film and set the kids up in a certain way that they don't have to use, because there's 20 kids in classrooms, right? They obviously can't bring 20 kids into a classroom, so they stagger like 9 of them to make it look like there's more of them. The classroom is smaller to give that appearance too. So I think that's why they all look the same.
That's true. That makes sense. It's just a shooting technique.
I thought it was weird the way that the desks were set up. Did anybody else like not get that?
They're kind of
the
like
horseshoe?
They were like there's
Yeah, it
like
wasn't
the
like the
people
typical everyone facing the teacher. They kind of opened it up. Like it was almost like set up for him to lecture in the middle or something like that.
Yeah, but the people that were against the wall with one of the chalkboards in the shelf, it almost looked like there was no space to sit behind the desk. I don't know. I just thought that was weird. And like the desks looked like office desks. They didn't look like school desks.
Well, what I loved was, so Mark walks into the classroom. It becomes known that he's the substitute. So as soon as they find out he's the substitute, they start having a paper fight, which I don't
never
recall in
happened.
all my years of school ever being like, oh, we can horse around at a paper fight.
Imagine if we ever did
but-
that with Big Red, she would have killed us.
So in the
forgot
middle of
Big
this
Red.
paper fight, though, Mark's trying to stop it, and he just starts going, stop throwing that paper. I went to prison. And I lost it.
That
Don't
one
throw
killed
that
it.
paper. I
Busta
died when that
Rhymes.
happened. I was like, what just happened? Why is this the response?
I just got out of prison.
It was so good.
It
made
worked,
no
though.
sense. It did.
I do love
Yeah.
too when the other kids like you're just like all those other subs, which makes me think that all the other subs had yelled at them that they just got out of prison and I just want to go hang out at that school so badly.
Oh my God, I can't get over it. Stop throwing that paper.
I do like his angry guy voice though. Like that was immediately like, oh, I hope he does this. Like I would keep watching it if every once in a while he yells at the kids in that voice because that
In
voice
that
is super
voice
funny.
specifically, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
that's a
like
good
in
voice.
that movie with Anna Faris was the house bunny or whatever, and every time she meets someone, there's like, oh hi, my name's Joe, and she goes, Joe Anthony. So, anyways, to not get too derailed,
Again?
yeah, again. So all these kids, one thing I noticed, like, in the 90s it was very popular to wear sports gear. Not that it ever went away, but like starter jackets and all that were really big at the time, and like baggy shirts and snapback hats. A lot of sports gear was like represented in the classroom.
Necklaces.
Not one person in that class though had anything remotely Oakland or like even San Francisco, and I'm like, that was kind of a missed opportunity.
That's
You
kind
could
of
have
odd, yeah.
represented
One
one
kid
of
is
the
actually
main
wearing a
kid, is it-
Celtics
is it-
hat.
Celtics hat, and that's what made me notice it. Yeah, he
Yeah.
had a Celtics hat on.
Is the main kid Arvin?
Irvin.
Irvin. The main kid Irvin is wearing cross colors. Remember that company Cross Colors?
No.
That jumped out right away. Those were like the shirts and the hats that were like different panels that were different colors. It's kind of like hip hop.
Yeah,
clothing.
So
was
does
huge at
anybody
that time.
else, now that we're on the topic of him, does anybody else Omar Gooding being in like everything around then?
All I can
Wild
think
and
of is
Crazy Kids?
Wild and Crazy Kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was in Ghost Dad. He was in Blossom. He was a reoccurring character. He was one of the main characters on Smart Guy, which is years later, I
Oh,
think.
man.
But
I feel like, but also Smart Guy.
I was gonna
and
ask
Blossom
that.
Definitely
I was gonna
coming
ask
soon.
if he was on Smart Guy because that's the only other thing I remember him from. And
Yeah,
I
he
couldn't
was
tell.
the
I
Younger
couldn't tell if it
Brothers.
was him or not.
My
Smart
notes
Guy, also
literally
another
say
TV show about about school, right? And also Nick Freno, licensed teacher, which I think was the show that played either before or
Yeah.
after that.
the line in my notes reads Omar Gooding, Wild and Crazy Kids. That was like hit.
Wild and Crazy Kids.
is
Yeah, it was-
actually Cuba Gooding Jr.'s cousin.
That's true. It's,
Wild and Crazy Kids was fun, but it was no skate TV.
That was also Nickelodeon, right?
Yep.
Early days
Early.
Nickelodeon.
Yeah, one season hosted by Skate Master Tate. Wicka wicka.
So the kids start challenging
That's like
Mr.
they
Cooper.
laugh for no reason.
So the kids start challenging Mr. Cooper, and in a way that to get into his head, it was kind of clever, right? Instead of just being defiant, it was almost like, "Oh, you're cool, right? Like we can call you Coop, right? We can do this, right? Like you're cool if we play music, right?" And he doesn't know that balance between being the teacher and being the friend. So he just starts letting the kids walk all over them, right? And they start blasting Motown Philly, which phenomenal song. So I
I
was
thought
like
it was
really
interesting. I
excited
want to
about
bring that up too. They paid for the rights at that time, and it's really weird too. So there must be a deal, right? Because I very distinctly remember an episode of Full House where they're doing like Stephanie has like a dance contest.
The
and they're
dance-
dancing
yeah,
to
they dance to Motown Philly.
It's Jeff Franklin. So I wonder if there's like a management connection or something. I didn't think to
Or-
look into it. It just connected to me now, but
Or Jeff Franklin bought the rights to the song as an individual and like could use the song. Maybe he literally had license to still use that song. And
I
just went
love
back
the
to it.
idea that anytime you stream like Motown Philly on Spotify or you buy the CD or whatever, that Jeff Franklin just hears like a little ka-ching noise on his phone, and the Boys to Men guys are just like working at Starbucks or whatever. Like, fuck.
Jay and I saw Boys to Men at Six Flags.
Yes, we did. It was legit the only reason I even went was wrote me in by seeing Boys to Men because I very much love them.
I would see Boys to Men over going on a roller coaster any day, so I'm with you.
Well, I like roller coasters, so I got to enjoy both.
So you just like to listen to the story of their whole career, which is a roller coaster enough for you.
So, anyways, what happens? So Motown Philly's blasting, and obviously that's very loud in the middle of class. So the principal walks in. And he immediately transitions into making a joke that he's teaching them about rain dancing, which I thought was a funny joke. It was like a nice little transition.
Yeah, that's that leads to the whole gag too, where he gets stuck in the chair and he has to move the chair around with him, right?
Right. That's right after that, right?
Yeah.
No, because I think it's during, or maybe he comes back in again a second time.
Yeah, he comes back in after because
comes back a
Arvin,
second.
what's the kid's name? Irving?
Irvin?
Irvin.
Yeah, Irvin's trying to leave, and that's when he glued him to the chair, which was very predictable.
Yeah, because Irvin wants to go and buy Belle Biv DeVoe tickets, which, again, very respectable. So they're hitting on all the good music right there.
I also love this stuff too because I'm just like, I'd go see Belle Biv DeVoe. Like if that show took place now, it'd be like, I need to buy Ariana Grande tickets or something. You'd be
I
like,
would
I don't
love
give a
to
shit
see
about
Belle
any
Biv
of this.
DeVoe,
Get the fuck out
Belle
of here.
Belle Biv DeVoe plays at the venue attached to the bowling alley in Town Line.
Oh, Belle Biv
Every now
DeBowl?
and Would say what?
Belle Biv DeBowl?
DeBowl? Is that what I said?
Bowling joke? It's a bowling joke.
Oh,
making a
DeBowl.
pun.
Wow.
Balls.
that.
Apparently that was a gutter ball.
Yeah. Oh god.
Strike.
So this all results in Omar Gooding's character Irvin gluing Mark to the seat, and he's stuck. And then the principal walks back in during all this commotion again, and it doesn't take long for the principal to go like, "Are you glued to the seat?" Which like leads you to believe that this is not an uncommon thing to happen to substitutes at the school.
Yeah, these kids are
All
bastards.
I could think of is there was a time when we were in high school or middle school maybe where there was a teacher who was allergic to peanut butter, and somebody put peanut butter on her door so that she couldn't leave the classroom.
Was it Miss
Because they
Souza?
thought that was a funny joke.
I
And
don't
if you
think we
think
should
about
get
that-
into names
I'm not saying
specifically.
names.
I think
I obviously
keep
said a
keep the
teacher. I'm going to cut
situation.
you out there for. But what I'm trying to say is, looking back at that now as a 35-year-old with a lot of empathy, that is horrifying to me.
Oh,
and the
that's-
idea
it's
that if
sick.
you just glued a person's jeans to the table, that's shitty too, but that's way less shitty. That like in 10 years it went from that to something very drastically more mean and dangerous, and
Getting hit in the nuts with a shovel or something like that.
yeah, like, oh, it's just so
It's
rough.
also a
Oh,
TV and
God.
movie thing that like super glue dries instantly to like stuff like.
The only thing super glue dries instantly to is your
Yep.
fingers, and you can just immediately pull it off. Like it's
That is
not
my
some-
least favorite feeling in the world is super glue on my fingers. Like, because you can't get it off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't come off.
What's the stuff they spray in the hole in the boat now? Is that the new one?
Flex Seal.
Flex Seal.
Flex
Flex
Seal.
Seal.
Yeah, I feel like the new sitcom
I
will
saw
be,
this
you put
boat
Flex
in
Seal my
half."
pants.
All right, so Mark ends up after this day. He ends up back home. Robin is at home doing at-home aerobics, which again, super of the time, like those mid-90s infomercial aerobic things.
But also way ahead of the curve too, because she's using those resistance bands, which are like all the rage right now. 30
Now,
years
but
later.
at that time of the 90s, like that was all the kind of crap that they would sell you, like the ad scene on TV aerobic stuff, like when
Oh yeah,
the
I
Suzanne
can
Summers
picture
ads
and
were out
my
all the
mother
time.
probably like would have bought that like.
And then literally she like later in the scene starts using like the Thigh Master, which I believe was the Suzanne Summers thing that she was promoting.
I can
back
do
then.
this all day.
Yeah. So Mark ends up back at work and we see what's going on.
We all see his pants. We don't want to lose the gag of his pants too. They're like, "Did you glue his pants?" He turns around and he has a perfectly embroidered heart
Yeah.
on the butt of his pants because the home ec class sewed that onto it, which I thought was a fun visual gag.
Yeah, it worked. And she starts talking about like her first day and finding the balance and that she was glued to the piano bench for her first day. So to
They
go back
pulled the
again,
fire
it
alarm.
looks like there's a common joke for the kids in the school to just glue people to chairs. And then
Little rascals.
You'd think that they would have gave him a heads up, though. That, like, by the way, if this is a recurring pattern, you'd think that they would give the substitute a heads up that, kids do this.
yeah, perhaps maybe like, just a heads up, these kids are really shitty when they know that you're not an actual part of the staff.
Yeah.
And then we end up with Vanessa running in for what I assume her date with William, and just in another tiny dress. Like,
Looking like a
she's
straight up hoa.
she's set up to be the eye candy of the show. They want you to know that she is very attractive.
Yeah, that's
they,
another
they
like
make it a
sexy
point.
scene.
Real-
Like again,
real
like the
toy.
Franklin stuff. Where I feel like this is Jeff Franklin's chance to try to do stuff a little more adulty, where
Edgy?
you can make all these jokes, because this is where the joke
Yeah.
comes into, where she's like, "I'd die for those boobs," and Mark Cooper goes, "So would I." Damn.
Damn.
Yeah, and that was another time it was just like at one point he's denying that he has any interest in her, and now very flirty with her. At some point, when William the date shows up, charming, nice guy, like, but very like right away mentions what kind of car he drives and how much it costs, which is not an attractive quality, but
And he bought it in Germany. They specifically mentioned that he bought a Porsche in Germany, which I find interesting,
Yep.
because you can buy a Porsche in Albany. Like, I don't know why you'd go all the way to Germany.
But he
to-
saved
yeah.
6%.
he could invest it on something else, and it was just show that he is a savvy
I
businessman.
love-
He made a what did he
love
say
this-
that he made a tiny sum, or he made a
I forget the word he
Yeah,
used.
there was a
boring
wording
guy
that he
who
used.
cares about money and numbers.
And Mark starts joking around with William, and it's really just to show you that, like, William's not, he's like a book smart, successful man, but like, he doesn't pick up on jokes very well because Mark's like talking circles around him, right? He's telling jokes and he's not picking up on it at all. What I thought was weird after was Mark sidebars with Vanessa and calls her aside. Is like, you don't really want to go out with this guy, right? Like, why don't you just stay and hang out with me? Again, really weird because the day earlier, he won't even admit to being interested in her, and now he's stopping her from going on a date and asking to just stay with me at home and watch TV. With William right there. William's a foot away at the door, and I'm to expect that he's not listening in on this conversation.
Maybe you think
Yeah,
that
I
he's
thought
so
that too.
self-centered, he's not paying attention. But also, you mentioned that he's like rapid-firing jokes on William, and he's not paying attention. One of them is he says something to him, and he goes, "Yeah, blew the seat right off my pants," which was another one where
I
I
laughed.
I was
probably laughed.
laughing pretty hard.
And then that scene pretty much ends, so now they're going to go on the date, but then the very next scene just cuts to the date's over. So now we see Vanessa back home, like, making an ice cream sundae.
Another sexual thing, they said chocolate is a substitute for sex.
Yeah, and I noted that because Mark was like very sexual with her, and like in bringing up sex and stuff like that, and really putting it out there, like trying to get that in her brain. But yeah, the
the
dynamic
worst.
between them is really, it's still very confusing between the two of them, and he goes right back into more sex jokes, makes fun of William, and then Mark leaves, and at this point, to like put a button on that whole conversation that they had, immediately Vanessa admits to Robin how boring William was after she wouldn't admit that to Mark, but as soon as Mark was gone, made it very known that the date was awful and that William was not entertaining at
Yeah,
all.
they had their first moment where she offered him
Yeah.
some ice cream. That was like the whole, bridging type of thing.
That was I thought like that a lot too, because now you have a point where you're like, hey, we're not just teasing this. Now we're actually being very upfront about the fact that, hey, this is a direction the show's going to go. Do you find the chemistry in these two people? Do you like these two characters? Then
Yeah.
keep watching because we've just spelled it out
Yeah.
for you. You know,
Even though the show
Yeah.
starts with you literally thinking the other girl is his love interest.
Or mom.
Yeah, they do make it, yeah, or mom if you're Ferg, apparently, but they do by the end of the show make it very known that the point is to eventually get Mark and Vanessa together.
Yeah.
Which ends that scene, and then we get back to the school, which is you see Mark and Irvin talking, and you can tell another running theme of the show is going to be that like Mark is he's like the mentor type to Irvin, like that's going to be like the link, right? That's going to be the go-to student that you're going to see him with most of the time.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, you can know
And-
he's going to be his
Yeah.
foil in the school. Like,
Right.
Vanessa is his foil at home. Irving is his foil
Yeah.
at school. Those two
And-
go back and forth, and maybe someday they'll meet, and that'll be funny too, right? Like that's like they're sort of teasing. You know that's going to happen eventually in an episode, whether it be at like a bake sale or a basketball game or something.
To call back to earlier, Irvin tries to sell Mark the Belle Biv DeVoe tickets that he had to leave the last class to go buy.
For $100. Now I meant to because Nick did it one episode, and I thought I was so smart, and I forgot to. I forgot to inflation calculator what $100 was in 1992.
It's like $250 today.
$250-ish. Would anybody here pay $250 to see Belle Biv DeVoe?
Maybe for like a
I really like
a suite.
If it wasn't just
Who
I
else
like
is
all
playing?
things connected to New Edition. Yeah, is it a New
Yeah.
Edition reunion, and then like they'll do a little set, and Bobby Brown will do a little set.
Oh, if it's
and
like a
Ralph
whole
will do a
day
little
fest
set.
thing, and you can get some food, and maybe there's like a beer pass thing.
If it was a
Maybe.
full-on New Edition reunion with everybody, and they all did their solo stuff, I'd pay $250.
I'd pay $250
I
to see
really like
Bobby
New Edition.
Brown alone.
And I really like Bobby Brown.
Yeah, I would
said
like to see Bobby
booby at
Brown.
first.
Ghostbusters.
I did. I was trying to get past it.
Booby Brown.
But and then we also find out in that scene that Mark drives a Dodge Dart. I forgot the year, but he drives a Dodge Dart, which is that's not a production vehicle.
I don't think
anymore,
they
right?
haven't made those in a while. Yeah.
Didn't they just make a new Dodge Dart, like in like 2016 or 2014?
I don't recall. I meant to like
thought
look it
they
up a little
did.
bit. But
You're asking
I
the
Pretty
just,
sure
wrong
Dodge now
person.
just
I
makes
don't know
big
cars.
trucks and like sports
Yeah.
cars again because they make those like cop cars or Dodges now, which is crazy. They all just look like the Road Warrior car, but I don't think they make a smaller car anymore. I think it's just like those sort of really fast, almost sporty
No,
looking
they
cars.
still make
and,
the
like, big
neon,
trucks
and
now.
the neon is small.
No, they 2016 Dodge Dart. They made
Did it only last the 1 year? Was it a 1 year only thing?
So it wasn't a bullseye.
Is the Dodge Dart still
One of these days, they're just gonna kick you out of the Zoom call.
The Dart returned in 2013. Hold on, I'm on Dodge.
But aren't you happy that I can just think of them?
He's
so
on the
quick?
hold on. He's on the Dodge Wikipedia page right now.
Sort of. Get
No,
off
I'm
of
on,
Wikipedia.
I'm on actually Dodge.com, not to be confused
Okay.
with Doge.
This would be the one time it would make more sense to be on the Wikipedia page.
Probably it would give you a more streamlined answer.
No, it says
In the middle of this quote, it's going to go, do I want to lease a 21?
He's gonna be after this. Is be him asking us if we think it's enough miles per
Yeah.
year.
We're gonna think Gordo bought a new Dodge Dart, but he just bought one from the
It was
90s.
discontinued. It was discontinued in 2016.
Oh, so
Is
it
this like a
lasted 3
Seinfeld
more
scenario?
years.
Instead of buying John
2013.
Voight's car, you buy Mark Cooper's Dodge Dart from 1992 and drive around.
Well, that's what happens when you take like an old car that has no popularity other than just the nostalgia that people remember that it existed and try to bring it back. Apparently, the Dodge Dart 3-year experiment bringing that back.
Geo trackers for everybody.
No, Geo Metro, bring those back.
But so anyways, class starts. You can already see Mark is doing a better job of being the teacher, right? He's opening up to them, but he's still showing them that he's in charge and what he wants them to sit down, no music. So, apparently just a very quick conversation with Robin was all it took for him to find that balance, but he got there. Tells him that he didn't take school seriously himself when he was younger, thought he was going to go to the NBA, wasn't good enough. And that explained to me why in the intro he took a shot that was only like 6 feet tall. Like that was because apparently he wasn't NBA ready. He couldn't take a full like 10-footer.
It's funny. He says that he's what was my other option to play in Italy.
That was the girl, and that was I thought
Yeah.
was a good line because she asked, well, "Why didn't you just play in Italy?" Which is like to this day a very valid thing. Like if you're not like if you don't quite make it or you're on the cusp of, you just go to
He played,
Europe
like,
for a few years.
Latvia or somewhere. It's crazy because whenever we watch like some new terrible Netflix dating show like Welcome to the Circle, there's always one guy who's like, I'm a professional basketball player, been playing for 10 years in Latvia. You're like, okay, I guess. Like if you're making money and playing,
in
good for
New
you.
Girl, that's where Winston played in Latvia.
Yeah, I mean those places in Eastern Europe and stuff, and Italy, like that's huge. You can make a ton of money. It's like Japanese baseball or all these sports where you're not like on the national or U.S.
Yeah.
or worldwide scene or whatever, but you can make good money and play it and not have to work a regular job. Like go for it. But it's always funny.
And-
They're like, I'm a professional basketball player, but they're always a little embarrassed. They're always like, you're in Europe.
Yeah.
So there was it was like a nice little callback to round out the show actually, and it was projected. I
Yep.
don't know if you guys
When
all
he
saw
said,
it
"Take a
coming too. I
seat."
thought it was very obvious was when he made Irvin sit down. Come to find out, Irvin's about to run off to do Irvin stuff, whatever he wants to do, which seems to be how he typically conducts his school days. You find out that he is now himself glued to the seat by way of Mark. So nice little callback, goes full circle. Mark shows that
Child
now,
abuse.
Would you
Right.
say they were horsing around?
He was way too cool with
Or how
being glued to the
gloomy
chair.
he's made of horses.
He's like,
Josh, I
well,
get
you
it.
got me.
Thank you.
But I think they did a good job there. It was like they showed the balance. I still don't know how they're still gonna have to find a way to transition a teacher being sick because he ate bad fish sticks into how does he stay at the school,
Very
right? Because you would
sick.
think that would only be a day or
Dead.
two off.
Yeah, how does he get a permanent job here?
Yeah, but I'm sure
Yeah.
in future episodes they would get to it. But that was just to get his foot in the door, and that's how it was exposed to us. But I thought they did a good job showing that maybe quick, maybe like typically you would think they would stretch it out a little bit, him trying to find that balance, but it looks like it just took one bad experience and a pep talk from his roommate, and then he just kind of figured out how to be a fun teacher but still get respect.
I think part of it, though, if you look into it a little harder, is it's not just a pep talk from his roommate. It's the girl he's really into is telling him, hey, you should do this. And she works there. So he wants to make
That's
sure
not
he
the
can
girl
get a
he's
job.
into.
not
He's
the
into the
girl.
other one.
What?
Robin's not the girl he's into. That's just his friend. He's
It's
into
very
the,
ambiguous as to what he's into. By the
I'm
way, I
confused
didn't
now,
get a
yeah. I
vibe that he
feel like-
was really into either.
I
of them.
thought
he
she
just
was, I guess it's just a friend. Okay, so
Hot
maybe
one.
maybe I'm off base there. I don't know what that says about the show. I enjoyed the show, but I guess it's kind of confusing because I'm mixing up everybody's backstory.
and there's only 3 real people you need to worry about, and they did kind of mix the roles a little
Well,
bit.
there was a 4th one, but they were made out of wood.
But somebody say what?
Both of you grounded. Be quiet.
Well, we're
unfortunately-
funnier comedians already than
Don't you say that Joey Gladstone.
much more than
How
Joey
dare
Gladstone.
you?
I can't wait till we do the Full House episode. That's just 40 minutes of me ranting that the episode where he's sad that he never made it is because he's just the worst comedian who's ever been created.
Well, spoiler
There
alert.
would be no way he would ever
None
be
of you
successful.
have to tune in for that episode.
But yeah. So, anyways, and we will eventually do Full House, and I'm sure eventually we'll do Fuller House.
Yay!
But
Did they officially
So-
cancel Fuller
It
House? I know
ended.
they
It
kicked
didn't-
off Aunt Becky.
I think it just
Yeah, it ended.
I think it was retired, as Alan Thicke would say.
Again, these situations make you so mad. Like, all these people were getting a payday again, and then Aunt Becky has to be a
That's
dickhead
not why.
and just kills all their payday.
No, it ended. It
I
was.
think that
Yeah,
It
because they
show-
fired
it was-
her. They flat out fired
yeah,
her
but
from the
that
show.
was 2 seasons.
She wasn't
before.
the star of the show. They could have went. They could have
They
went
did,
on without
They
her.
did 2
Like,
seasons.
she wasn't
without her.
pivotal.
They just did Jesse a lot more.
Not everybody's married to a famous hockey star in that show. Some people needed that money.
I would say that show ran longer than you would have naturally expected it to under the circumstances. The show, and we'll talk about this eventually when we
We'll
do a
get
Fuller
there.
House episode, but it was as good as it could be under the circumstances, and they had a nice enough run and probably surpassed their initial expectations.
We ready to go around the horn on this one, or what?
Yeah, so we'll just end on this one last thing. The show ends, and they do another camera break, which I thought was weird. So they start with the very, fourth wall breaking cold open, and then the outro after the show is Mark Curry as Mark Curry, not Mr. Cooper. Again, just being himself, talking to the audience, and just trying to tell everyone what his name is. Like,
Does
just
he make a curry
basically,
chicken
like,
joke?
Yeah, he does.
He did.
Yeah,
He
like
said
curry
like,
chicken.
yeah,
Yeah,
like the
Like curry
chicken.
chicken, yeah.
And he just wanted everyone to know who he was. Like, the joke was like, I know you don't know who I am, so like, just remember me. And so kind of weird. They started that way, they ended that way. They were really trying to approach television a little different by going that way and break the fourth wall and try to have you connect not just to Mr. Cooper but Mark Curry. I think they wanted you to really come to like that guy, and that would give the
Right.
show legs.
yeah, I thought that was weird. I thought
But
that was really weird.
But that's the whole show. I mean, ultimately, although it ran standard time, there wasn't a lot to the story. It was, here he is, gets a job at school, kids mess with him, gets a pep talk, finds his balance. Sub-story, Vanessa has a date, doesn't work out. Not a lot really happens in it, but they do a good job explaining these characters to you, except for the relationship dynamic, and you get a vibe for who everyone is. Fun show. It had its moments. Definitely, like I said, it got a few laughs out of me, which a lot of shows don't. But when you start screaming like, "I was in prison, put down that paper," that's all I needed, I guess, in a half hour of television. So yeah, let's go around, and I'm gonna go around in the order that I can see you in on my chat. So Gordo, start off. How did you feel? Green light or cancel? Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
I'm really torn. I actually am really torn. Like, it seemed longer than when you just laid out the plot line. I didn't like the open and the close. Especially the close. Like, Mark Curry, I just watched a full 25, 30-minute show with you. I know who you are. I like who you are. I sat through the whole episode. However, I did like the dynamic between the roommates. I did think that there was a lot of good, fast-paced humor, and I think that they all really had great chemistry. I'm gonna greenlight it.
All right,
gonna
Joe.
greenlight it.
Joe, on to you. Green light or cancel? Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
This is a golden age of sitcoms to me that I don't think exists now. A comedian has a bit, or routine, or whatever. They say, hey, this person's getting traction. Let's find a show around them. Let's make it work. I don't think that'll ever happen again, and a lot of it is tinged in nostalgia from there was so much of that when we were kids. And even the bad ones, those people came like weirdly kind of ubiquitous in our lives, right? So I don't want to base it just strangely on nostalgia. And there was a lot of shows that took place in schools, and it was simple, but I don't know, I found myself, I love sitcoms, so it's hard, but like I loved it. I enjoyed it. It was another one of those shows that we watched where I probably hadn't seen it in 20-something years. And episode 1 ended, and we had to immediately stop and be like, change the channel, because I wanted to watch the next one. And I think that's the ultimate test if you think a show should get passed or not, if you want to see episode 2. So for me, it's a green light.
Ferg, on to you.
I remember this show being on. I didn't continue watching it in the 90s. I'm not going to continue watching it now. Canceled. It was just way too sloppy for me. Didn't do it for me. I had a couple laughs, but a lot of it was cringe. And And then, like I said, confusing relationships, not much explained, and it felt very dated, but not in like a charming way, like oh, cool nostalgia. It didn't do it for me.
Nick, on to you.
I liked the character of Mark Curry, or Mark Cooper. I liked it. But he was the only character I liked. I didn't like the roommates. I don't think they were really very charming in the right ways. And it was sloppy, like Ferg said. Like, I don't really know what the hell is happening with anything. And I just, at the end of the day, wasn't really enticed to come back. I do remember parts of the show just from watching it back in the day, and I didn't hate it back then. But as far as the pilot goes, I'm going to cancel it.
All right, so for me, so it's 2-2, comes down to me right now, right? I think that the show had its holes for sure, but ultimately, from the second Mark Curry went, "Stop throwing that paper, I was in prison," that show was going to get a green light from me because I love that so much. Listen, I don't think this show was doing anything too crazy, and the funny thing is, I think a lot of this show was, it was very, like, made specifically just to appeal to an audience, right? Like, it just looked like they put all these pieces in play, like, we need something a little cooler, we need something a little hip, we need to compete with these NBC shows. And they kind of formulated this show just to rival that, but it had a good run, and even though there wasn't a lot of meat on the bone, something about it, Mark Curry, I think, just did a good job. It was enough to sell the show on me, so green light for me. So congratulations, Hanging with Mr. Cooper. On a narrow 3-2 vote, we are going to green light you. You do live to see another day. So you will make it to episode 2, which we didn't get to watch, but it does have a full house cameo situation for those of you who want to go back to it. So,
Damn! Toy.
So that's it. That's it for this week, guys. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Just a reminder, go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find the links to all our social media, where you can listen to us. Please subscribe. Please give us a follow. Let us know what you think of the show, what shows you want us to talk about, and we will catch you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
Fine.
Foin.